Happy Veganuary. Veganuary. Happy January. Today let's talk about some recipes that helped me transition to the point of being vegan, so I figured they can probably help you too. Up first, we have this cauliflower tahini soup. I love this soup. I once had something similar to this at a restaurant, and I really liked the idea of combining cauliflower and tahini. So let's start with a whole diced white onion. Add that to a pot over a medium heat with some oil. Stir that around and saute it for a bit before adding about 4 to 5 cloves of garlic. Adjust to your taste preferences, of course, but if you are a garlic person, then add plenty. Give that just a minute or so to cook off before adding about a half a head of cauliflower. I know you might be thinking you want to add the whole thing, but this makes a lot of soup. So we're only going to be adding a half for now. Just stir it around, make sure the onions aren't sticking to the bottom of the pan and burning. Up next is our spices. For this, we're going to be adding salt, black pepper, white pepper, ground thyme, turmeric, and a little bit of cinnamon. Trust me here, it works out really well. This comes out to a really nice spiced dish. Stir those around just to make sure all the cauliflower is about as evenly coated as you can get it, before adding in about 4 cups, give or take, however much it takes to cover your cauliflower, of vegetable broth. You're going to cover that and let that cook for about 15 minutes or so. After it's been at a boil for about 15 minutes, you're going to add about a half cup of raw cashews. This is going to add a lot of creaminess to the final product, and I find that it really helps to thicken up soups in that way. I'm also adding about a 1/4 cup of tahini here. You can add this now, or you can choose to add it later when you blend it. If you add it now, as you can see, it starts to kind of collect at the surface there. It might look a little gross, but I promise you it tastes fantastic. Zip that up in your blender or with a hand blender of choice, and this is the finished product. I would highly recommend garnishing with a little bit of olive oil in addition to some green onion, maybe some slivered almonds. Hemp seeds is always a fun one, but do not skip out on the olive oil here. If you really don't want to include it, that's fine. But it really takes this recipe from something that you would just eat on a cold January day to warm you up to something that's really luxurious and flavorful. Up next, we have a sweet potato couscous. This is a pretty simple recipe with only a few ingredients here, but obviously, first and foremost, we're going to start with that sweet potato. Add it to a baking tray along with your spices. Here, I've chosen to use dried rosemary, some cinnamon, and just a touch of nutmeg. Trust me on this one, it works. And when it's nice and evenly incorporated, you're going to add it to a 375-degree oven for about 20 minutes. Next, start by heating some oil over medium heat in a skillet. And you're going to add your greens here. I've chosen to use dandelion greens because it's what I happen to have on hand, but kale, spinach, or a blend of the 3 would also work great in this. You're going to let those saute and wilt down until they're a nice deep green color, and then add just about a tablespoon of lemon juice. Don't go too crazy on the lemon juice here, as a lot of these greens tend to have a very naturally bitter taste, and incorporating more bitterness to it can often lead in an overpowering bitterness to this dish. Now we're going to cook the couscous. Add just about a half tablespoon of vegan butter or margarine to a saucepan on medium heat. And after that melts, you're going to add in your dried couscous. I have about 1/3 cup of it here, and in my experience, a 1/3 cup dry couscous is just about the perfect serving size for one person. You're going to stir that around to incorporate it and just impart that buttery goodness flavor onto all of the couscous. Make sure none of it is clumping or forming balls or anything like that. And then you're going to add about 1/3 cup of water. This should come to a boil pretty quickly, as this is not a large amount of couscous. You're gonna cover it. Couscous doesn't take long to cook, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and you'll have that result. Finally, incorporate your couscous with the greens that we sauteed earlier and add your roasted sweet potato. Here, depending on how lemony you want your finished product to be, you can incorporate as much or as little of the lemon juice that we have set out as you want. I wouldn't go upwards of more than, say, 2 to 3 tablespoons here. Like I said, this dish can very easily become very bitter, and we don't want that. If you have any vegan Parmesan, that's an excellent topping for this, as well as just a little bit more lemon juice that we used earlier to impart that citrusy flavor onto the greens. And there you have it. This is a really easy dish. It comes together real quick. It's super cheap to make. It takes practically no time at all, and it is one of my favorites. Up next is a personal favorite of mine. This is some broccoli pesto gnocchi. We're going to be making the pesto ourselves from scratch. So to start with that, we're going to take about I have a half of a really large onion, so I'd say probably 1 normal-sized onion, and 4 to 5 garlic cloves, still in their skins, mind you, to a baking sheet. Add a little bit of oil and salt, toss to coat, and then add to a 375-degree oven for about 20 minutes. Up next, we're going to do just about the same thing to the broccoli. I have one very small head of broccoli here. In hindsight, I would have made more, but we're going to add that to the same oven for about 25 to 30 minutes. Here I have some nuts that I've been soaking in boiling water for about 15 minutes. I have about a 1/4 cup cashews and a 1/4 cup of walnuts. You can use different nuts if you want, but I would avoid peanuts for this one. We're going to drain and rinse them to prepare them to be the base of our sauce. This will hold the pesto together really nicely. Next, take your gnocchi and add it to a pot of salted boiling water. Be a little safer than I was here. This was a little too splashy for boiling water for my liking. Gnocchi doesn't take long to cook at all. After a few minutes, they'll start to float to the surface, at which point you can pull them out with a slotted spoon or just dump them all out over a colander like I definitely did off camera. Time to make the sauce. Add those nuts to your blender of choice. Incorporate about a cup of packed basil here. This is going to be where our main pesto flavor comes from. Add some spices. Here I really only have salt, pepper, and a little bit of chili powder. Chili powder and basil just interacts with the roasted onion that we're now adding really, really well. If you haven't tried it before, I would recommend it. Don't forget to remove the skins from your roasted garlic as well. Next, we're going to add the juice of about a whole lemon. This ended up being very lemony, so if you're not a big fan of the lemon flavor, I'd say a half a lemon is probably fine. And then blend it up. Not pictured here, I did add about 3 tablespoons of oil here, which helps emulsify the final product. And then taste and season to your liking. You're going to add that gnocchi from earlier to a skillet on medium heat with a little bit of oil. Let it fry off for just a minute or two. Get it a little bit of golden brown color on the bottom before adding about a 1/4 cup of sun-dried tomatoes. These are julienne strips. I find you actually get more in the jar when you buy the julienne ones, but that could just be me. Next, we're going to add that broccoli that's been roasting in the oven and should be nice and crispy by now. And then I add roughly 3 tablespoons of the pesto sauce here, but you can put as much or as little as you would like based on your own tastes. Just stir it to combine it, and I would remove it from the heat pretty quickly, as if you cook the pesto too much, that basil flavor can cook off very quickly, and we want to save that. Top it with a little bit of vegan Parmesan if you have some, and I put a little basil leaf on it for aesthetic purposes. And enjoy! Like I said, this dish is so easy to make and it comes together so quickly that it's a great after work or school meal. It's filling, it's dense, it comes together really quick, it's quite cheap and simple to make, and honestly, it's a framework for so much more. For instance, try adding cherry tomatoes, spinach or kale, or green peas to really bolster up this meal. And that about does it. Thank you for joining me today for this video. These are all wonderful meals to make for things like meal prep, to make in advance, to make large batches of, to bring to work or school, or just have as a quick meal after work or school. I really love them all and have them all the time. I wish you the best of luck in your vegan journey.